or, you know.
Okay, I've got two more people, and then I'm going to come back to the panel for their final remarks. Now, there's a gentleman, I think, got the mic, and then if we take the other one, if you could put your hand up so the person can see you, and then I'll take you, because you're smiling at me nicely, and then we're done.
Basically, I'm a Muslim, so I decided to, because I've never done biology before at school, so I decided to take biology crash higher to see what the other side of the story is, because I've been brought up as a Muslim. But you see, we've been taught about mutations and all these kind of things, but I kind of feel that I have to go somewhere else to see how evolution happened. They teach mutations, and then they just jump to, you know, there was some kind of a cow with two horns, and then some kind of animal with two big horns, and it slowly, gradually changed. But I don't see, like, they don't teach how that happened. They teach about mutations, but then they don't show, like, what kind of mutations happened or anything like that. I feel there's kind of gaps that they just want to cover up. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against, you know, I believe in science, but, you know, I have nothing wrong with the Big Bang or anything like that. But I kind of feel that, you know, if they put that next to it and say that, you know, okay, it's not complete yet, or if they do have the answer, why don't they show us the full picture? Why is it just some bits are covered up, but some bits are kind of revealed? So it's a sketchy picture. It's not a full picture. I'm not against science. It's just I have these questions that are not being answered. Thanks.
Okay, and there's you, and then if we can bring it down to this lady. Yes, sir.
To address the previous commenter, I could give you some good books if you want. Anyway, my question is to Dr. Surtees. The Templeton Foundation, which is an organisation founded by a religious scholar, once said, we will give money to any intelligent design researchers who want to do some research, and they did not receive any applications for that. Now, if you've got such good evidence that creation is the case, you could get some money, do some research, if you're a scientist, as you say you are, do some research, and then publish it in a journal, in a scientific journal. Start small. You don't need to start saying that you know, we're all the children of Adam and Eve yet, but you could start small. Start with information in the genome, something like that. Publish it in a journal, and then once it's published in scientific journals, it'll get to textbooks, and then kids will get taught it. There we are. What a wonderful way that would be to do it. Why don't you just do some science, and then we'll all listen to you?
I hope you don't regret that remark. And then we'll come to you, and then I'll come to the panel for their final comments. Yes.
Well, first of all, gentlemen, she's watching, not he. I think that is one of our problems. We try and put things into small compartments that we can understand and, dare I say, control as well. My background is interesting, perhaps. I started in mathematics, went to computer science, and ended up in theology. So I've got three strands, and it's amazing to me how often the logic of mathematics and the theology as well combine. But I wanted to raise an area. Andalusia, we talk about Muslims, and I don't know how many people are aware that during the sort of Middle Ages, the Dark Ages in Europe, we had a fantastic flowering in Granada, Seville, in Andalusia, where the Muslim scientists showed a tremendous renaissance of knowledge at the same time as keeping alive their faith. It was a culture where Muslim, Jew, and Christian survived together, in fact, flourished together. I think in the 21st century, we perhaps lost a little bit of that, and we need to regain that, where our scientists and our theologians can talk to each other. And it's a question that's not going to be answered tonight. I'm also a school teacher, and I tell you, you should be surprised what gets taught in Scottish secondary schools.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to come back to my panel for their final remarks. If I can start with you, Alex.
Well, I was going to thank, I don't know if this is the last time I'm going to say anything.
Oh, no. I mean, it is on the panel.
Okay, well, I was just generally going to thank everybody for coming along tonight. Tiffany, Institute of Ideas. The great thing is to have this on the platform and to have the discussion on the table. And so, what was that? Sook. Yeah. Well, it's too late now. If I was sook, I would have sooked at the beginning. It's too late now, you see. But my position, again, is that I'm a firm supporter, advocate of doing science in the science classroom. When science moves beyond that boundary into addressing questions that are philosophical, when the science teacher takes off the white coat, when he puts on the tweed jacket, sorry for wearing this, trying to pretend I am a philosopher tonight, and makes statements, for example, along the lines that the universe came from nothing. I don't think it's stupid to ask the question, where did it come from? And if that answer is not scientifically verifiable, if it's some kind of hypothesis, that is fine. But to ask the question and to establish, as many are just blindly told, that it came from nothing, or that the mechanism is unguided, or that we naturally have order from disorder, or that we naturally produce life from non-life, these are significant questions. And whenever materialism, which is a philosophy that bleeds into the science classroom, whenever that is represented, there's an opportunity where the case for no God is given. That is only fair to give the case for a creator alongside that, to balance it. And again, give the students the information, and whenever there's a philosophical discussion in the science classroom, and let the students make up their own mind.
I'd just like to kind of come full circle. As I started the evening with putting poor Anne on trial there, up for murder, and well, I'm a crime writer. And Alex is making the point about us drawing conclusions in science class. In science class, we can only really present cases for things we do have evidence for. The point I was trying to make with regards to this supposed murder trial is this false dichotomy that if there is a lack of evidence for one point of view, does not provide any evidence at all for another unless you provide evidence for that. And I think that remains the problem with arguing that it does continue to assume that the default explanation is a God without proffering any evidence for it. So you're taking advantage of that default by suggesting that we can't draw certain conclusions from scientific observation. I think we can only teach in science the study of natural phenomena. We can't teach a study or inference of supernatural phenomena because we don't have any evidence, we don't have any means by which to study that. So science is really about studying what we can actually study in the real world. So let's leave that in the science class, real world in the science class, ethereal world in the philosophy class.
So much can be said. I think I've noted down while people were talking, the question to me is, what is truth? And Christopher, I think, is put his finger on it. The real world we teach in science, but the rest we teach elsewhere, implying that it's not actually real. Well, I think that's where we have the problem with the boxes. We're putting things in boxes. So over here we have scientific truth, and over here we have religion. And it was Sir Julian that said, I respect somebody's opinions, but even if they're wrong, they're not intellectually intolerable, even if they're wrong. Well, how can something that's wrong be intellectually tolerable? So, surely, truth is what we're seeking after. And I think that's where I want to end my contribution. We need to find out the truth. We need to critique the best arguments of both sides. We need to keep the debate going. We need to search for truth, and we follow the evidence where it leads.
Thank you, Marc. Julian.
Briefly, things that can be wrong but intellectually tolerable because it is not so clear that they are wrong. There's room for debate, okay? Now, but I want to just change the focus a bit because I think there's a kind of impression that might be given here that this is really a debate between the religious and the atheists. And I think that's wrong. Former Bishop of Oxford, Richard Harris, and lots of people like him are banging their heads against the wall, saying that all this ID stuff is an absolute disaster for religion. Because intelligent religion, not so long ago, no one was disagreeing with the theory of evolution. They'd all come to terms with that. No one was sort of like, amongst the sort of like he's shaking his head. I'm not saying all religious people, but a lot of this sort of, certainly the more intellectual sort of strands of it, people accepted that the Bible wasn't literal truth. This wasn't being fun. The idea of the God of the gaps, people recognised that was a disastrous idea of God. That this is why people in thousands of years ago thought all the thunder's going. What did that? Must be God. The idea of plugging the gaps in our knowledge with God was disastrous, and people recognised that attempts to plug gaps in our knowledge of how the natural world works in ID is also disastrous. So all these things, whether they were the majority or not, okay, you can argue about that. But there are plenty of people who are making headway in the upper echelons of the church, in serious areas of religious belief, who, had accepted all this stuff. Now they find that when people think of religion, and they think of people who are sort of like anti-scientific, anti-evolution, believing literal truth of the Bible, And the smarter, more intelligent wing, as I'd put it, I'm afraid, of religion is, on the decline. So I think this is really a disaster for religion. It's also a disaster for Islam, by the way, because Islam, of course, did have, in various periods of its history, a good tradition of science and mathematics and everything. And contemporary resistance in Islam to theory of evolution isn't doing it any credit either. So I think that let's not just pretend this is a debate between atheists and the religious. The religious camp is not unified on this at all. And I want to sort of offer my support to all those religious people who want to fight intelligent design and creationism, not on the basis that it's religion and therefore it's nonsense, but on the basis that it's false and therefore it's nonsense.
Dave.
Yeah. Where can you find a religious person? Not in an RE lesson, that's for sure. Most RE teachers in schools these days just don't believe in God. And my experience of this says this very loud and clear. Because what is taught in RE lessons is a kind of relativist critique of religion, much as what is now being taught in science lessons is a relativist critique of science. No one believes in anything much at all. And I just wish they would. I mean, if religious people would stand up and say, I believe in God, and I will subscribe to this religion, and I'm damn going to stand up for it, great. You can actually then respect them for believing in something. But if they're saying to me, no, well, I can't say that, but I'll hide it somewhere in whatever place you can fit it into a scientific laboratory, I just think, it just shows the weakness of religion as much as anything else. And just to rub it in the Texas, which is one of the heartlands of creationism being taught in schools and all the rest of it, the Texas Board of Education just last week dumped the teaching of the weakness of the theories of evolution. They're losing the argument. It doesn't wash. It's not an upsurge of religious fervour taking over in the States, and I really just don't think that's the case here either. But what we are dealing with is a lack of belief in anything. And when it comes to science, the thing that I would argue is that if you believe in science and you've got anything to say about it, you should stand up for what it is. And then, the young man over there, you raise valid critiques about biology and what it explains, you'd expect your science teacher to damn well explain it to you. And if that was the case, then you might be able to resolve the issue yourself. But unfortunately, for too many people, that we're just losing the ability to do that.
5 words, sorry. Do you lack conviction? I'm not so sure.
And with that, can we thank our panel?